Hi there, this is Matthew of Mr. Chen Writes. Welcome to my channel. Today we will be looking at the two FA nibs that Pilot offers. We will start with a brief introduction of the company and the nibs, then comparing them in terms of line variation, softness, flow, and how they perform in normal writing and flexed writing. Before we start, as a disclaimer, both pens have a flexible nib factory ebonite feed installed, and the number 10 nib has been grinded into a needle point by CPN of Muse Pen Hong Kong. Therefore, these nibs do not write the way it is in the video out of the box, but I will try to share my initial impression of the writing experience of both pens when I talk about their performance individually. The Pilot Pen Corporation is founded in 1918 under the name of the Namiki Manufacturing Company. It all started when Namiki, one of the founders, started manufacturing 14-karat gold nibs entirely in Japan. In the following decades, along with the company's expansion to overseas, mainly their Marquier pens, Pilot also started exploring a number of nib types. Around the late 20s to early 30s, a number of nib options including posting nib, coarse, manifold, soft, script, and oblique was introduced. With the rich history of in-house nib development, it is not a surprise that Pilot has one of the biggest nib lineups of modern pen manufacturers, with 15 in their custom 742 model and 14 in the custom 743 model. Only Sailor with their special Naginata nibs can come close to that, but I think they are more of a niche product for drawing and calligraphy when compared to what Pilot has to offer. One of the nibs in that massive Pilot's nib lineup is the FA nib, which is short for Falcon, and you can easily tell it apart from the rest of the family. While the other Pilot nibs all have the same decoration stamped on the nib, the FA nib sports a very clean look, with only the brand name, gold content, nib size, and type underneath the breather hole. The nib also has a couple of cutouts, one on each side, just below the wings of the nib. To let the tines flex even more easily, the nib is also made a little thinner than the regular nibs. In my collection, the number 10 FA, which came with the custom Heritage 912, is put in a flexible nib factory Yovo nib unit and then screwed onto the Leonardo Magica. And the number 15 FA nib is on the Pilot's Custom 823. So without further ado, let's dive into the performance of both nibs. Line variation is created by the tine splitting up when the user applies pressure, and it is affected by a number of factors such as the length of the tines, the material of the nib, where the cutouts, or even the shape of the breather hole. One common perception is that the bigger the nib, the flexier it is. This is sometimes true, like when we compare different Pelican gold nib models and maybe Mont Blanc 149 and 146. However, in the case of FA nibs, the number 15 is actually a little stiffer. The maximum line width of the number 10 nib is around a nib size more than the number 15. On the other side of the line variation measurement is the thinnest part of the line when no pressure is applied. Out of the box, the number 15 nib writes slightly thinner because of the stiffness, it is easier to write a consistent thin line, whereas the number 10 nibs responds to the slightest change of pressure. As I mentioned, the number 10 FA nib that I have has undergone a needlepoint grinding work, so as of this moment, the number 10 nib absolutely smashes the number 15 nib in terms of line variation. As for the view of the nib, the number 10 nib has often been criticized by people in the fountain pen community of being too mushy. I agree that it is on the soft side with quite a weak snapback, but it is still usable and quite enjoyable to write with. On Pilot's website, they actually stated that the FA nib is for people who can only apply weak pen pressure. So I guess if that's the intention, the number 10 nib has done a competent job. The 15 nib is bouncier, which means you can feel the nib tines trying to snap back to the original shape after going past a certain point. And therefore, the control will be easier and I feel more secure when I use it, as the snapback almost guarantees that I will not accidentally break the nib by applying too much force. The flow of the original feeds are quite terrible when flexed when they are out of the box, as the pen may be designed to write kanji characters with shorter strokes. It gets a pass when it comes to flow. However, to maximize its ability to and its performance to do cursive writing, it is certainly better to swap out the feed or changing the filling system. I would say the A23's filling system provides a better flow than the cartridge or converter systems that Pilot has to offer. That is also the reason why I chose to put my number 10 nib into a piston filler. In terms of performance in everyday writing, the number 15 nib gets my vote. The reason behind is the smoothness of the nib and how the tines do not split so effortlessly. It is quite annoying to write an upstroke and have my pen eat into the paper, or have a wide line just because I put a little too much weight onto my writing hand. As for drawing or doing calligraphy, they both have their own merits, with the number 10 nib offering more line variation with lighter hand, which I imagine would be better for longer sessions of drawing or writing. It is also harder to control, and unless you have a very stable hand or you are a professional artist or calligrapher, I find it a little bit difficult to produce a consistent result. The 15 nib offers a more steady and stable experience, and the outcome I imagine would be more consistent. One interesting point to consider is how number 15 nib can make sharper corners when you flex at the start of the stroke, which is aesthetically more in line with a lot of scripts. The experience of writing on the number 15 nib is closer to the vintage ones, like the Waterman 52 I have here, because of the snapback. Although the number 10 nib can only make kind of a round end, there are ways to work around it, like what I'm showing in the video. All in all, both pens are a joy to write with, and they are definitely not leaving my collection anytime soon. They are different enough to justify owning both. However, if you are just starting out on gold flash nib pens and you don't want to mess with vintage options, the number 15 on the 743, which is easier to find, is probably the better option. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you do, please like and subscribe and all the YouTube stuff. See you guys next time on another video. Bye bye.